Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our keynote speakers, expert moderators, panelists, and solutions sponsors for participating in this year's Insight Jam Live. This has been a big year with the launch of the InsightJam.com community site and the amazing growth of the Insight Jam YouTube channel, which now has over 500,000 subscribers. Much of this success is tied directly to the video events, podcasts, and panel discussions we have been producing, and none of that would be possible without the thoughtful participation of the many IT professionals who are generously sharing their expert insights for this latest jam. We are building Insight Jam to be a place to celebrate enterprise technology with best practices, expert analysis, and solution showcases. And we want all of you to join us there to keep the jam going into the new year and beyond. If you haven't joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you already have, take a moment to invite some of your colleagues. And again, thank you all for being here and enjoy this event.
Solutions Review presents Insight Jam, a social media community for enterprise technology. Hello and welcome back to Insight Jam. My name is Jonathan Paula. Pleased to have you with me again for our second panel of the day as we discuss leveraging AI for automated data governance and compliance. We have again assembled a wonderful group of panelists from around the globe to help me with that topic. George, Peter, Jim, Sumit, Dirk, and Sanjeev. Welcome one and all. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time today. George, you've graciously agreed to moderate, so I'm going to let you kick things off with our introductions. 30 seconds or so, tell the audience a bit about yourself and maybe your background in this space.
Happy to. My name is George Firican. I'm a data governance professional. I'm the founder of LightsOnData, where I also provide courses, practical insights, templates to help organizations and professionals excel in data governance and data management, because that's my background. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis. I'm also the host of the LightsOnData Show podcast, where I dive into thought-provoking discussions with industry leaders on all things data. And that's me.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Dirk, over to you next.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, I'm Dirk Garner. I run a small consulting firm, and I focused my career probably about the last 20, 25 years on data governance, data strategy, and data engineering, most commonly in the healthcare and retail spaces. We focus essentially on how to extract value from data, how to get your analytics and data teams working efficiently together. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Jim, I know you're still potentially working on your camera, but let's hear from you.
Yeah, Jim Barker. I lead data governance efforts at Wavical Data Solutions. I wrote a doctoral dissertation years ago and have been focusing on AI of late, in particular how AI can help data stewards and data governance programs.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here, Jim. Appreciate it. Next up is Peter. How are you?
Hi, I'm Piotr Czarnas. I'm the founder of DQOps. It's a pretty new data quality platform. It's open source. And I have about 25 years of professional experience. Half of my life I spent at Roche, where I started as a first employee in a Polish branch. Later on, I was managing a team of 120 people, mostly software engineers, data engineers, quality specialists. And then I also moved to consulting, and that's where I actually decided to grow a data quality platform based on my experience and projects that I was working on.
Excellent. Thank you for being here. Next up is Sanjeev. Welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's so great to be on this Insight Jam. My name is Sanjeev Mohan. I am an independent advisor consultant. I used to be with Gartner for many years. In fact, one of my former colleagues is on this show as well. And I cover anything that has the word data in it. So whether it's data quality, data governance, data management, observability. And now I've also started writing a lot about agents, the whole generative AI space. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you for being with us. And last but not least, Sumit, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. I am an ex-Gartner analyst in the data management space, and Sanjeev was my colleague at Gartner for about 3.5, 4 years.
Oh, there you go.
At GraphWise, formerly called Ontotext, I wear multiple hats. from building thought leadership for adoption of semantic knowledge graphs to solving data management challenges across enterprises, as well as working as a solutions architect to help the pre-sales team to showcase capabilities of semantic graph database. My background has been with databases for a long time. I was one of the first adopters of big data technologies like Hive and Pig way back in 2000, early 2000. So yeah, that's it.
Excellent. Thank you again, everyone, for being here. We really appreciate your time. And over the next hour, I'm looking forward to this discussion. But since I'm not qualified to lead it myself, George is going to take the reins from now, and I'll catch up back with all of you at the end of the show to close things out. Take it away, George.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you again, for having me on. Well, listen, data is becoming increasingly complex, and regulatory landscapes are continuously evolving, and organizations are also facing mounting challenges in maintaining effective data governance and compliance frameworks. However, I think that AI could be proving to be a game changer, offering new opportunities for automation, for optimization, for scalability. So I'm very thrilled to be joined by this expert panel of thought leaders and LinkedIn friends who bring unique insights into how AI is reshaping the world of data governance and compliance. So together, we're going to explore practical strategies, discuss challenges, and we're going to look ahead to the future of data governance in an AI-driven world. So to start things off, let's focus on one of the most exciting opportunities that AI brings to the table, and that's automation. So my first question to you is, what specific aspects of data governance and compliance are best suited for AI-driven automation? And what do you think the benefits are that organizations expect from adopting these solutions? Sanjeev, why don't we start with you?
Yes, thank you so much, George. So in my experience, automation is actually, I would say, the killer use case of something called AI agents. And what we are starting to see how AI is helping with automation, whether it's in data governance space or in any space for that matter, is there are two aspects that differentiate. The first aspect is the fact that it's action oriented rather than just instruction based, rule based. I tell it to do something, it goes and it does it for me. Now with AI, I can have it infer what is the context, find rules or context that I may have missed in a static rule. That's number one. And the second thing I want to talk about is that it's autonomous, which means I can say that AI, when you find some anomaly, then go do the next best action, which is also being generated by the LLM in this case. So that those things where it's more action oriented based on inference, and then it can autonomously go and execute a task is what makes data governance so much more exciting in this era of generative AI.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Piotr, what do you think? You're working on improving data quality quite a bit. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I love the kind of use cases where we can help at least 80% of cases or data sets with low effort. So maybe some technologies would be great. I wish that in a few years we'll have great AI agents that can automatically figure out some issues and fix them. But for the moment, the biggest value is in those solutions where you just turn them on and they just provide some value. So I think there are two areas which every company should look at. First is anomaly detection, which is the biggest use case of data observability, because you can apply it to any data set and instantly get value. And the other is to apply generative AI to create documentation. Because if you just look at the true value of generative AI, if you just use vector embedding of the values in every column and ask AI, okay, what does it look like? Those 10 values, it will tell you those are cities, those are countries. If you ask it to give you a documentation, you will get a brilliant documentation for the data catalog or for anybody who wants to understand this data set. Those are the two use cases that should work for, I think, 90% of data sets.
Thank you. Dirk, you're interacting with a lot of companies. Are you seeing any of these benefits or any other benefits taking advantage of automating some of data governance functions?
Yeah, sure. We're using AI to accelerate and automate things like data catalog collection, business glossary, both collection and term generation for review, and also deriving insights and suggestions regarding potential data quality problem areas and documentation and communication. And when I think about the use of AI for data governance, the way I look at it is I kind of divide it between things that can be mostly correct and still the business doesn't suffer if they're not entirely correct, and things that need to be 100% correct. And what I mean by the latter is in healthcare, your master data program would need to be 100% correct. So AI would be less of a candidate in my thinking. And in the retail space, if you're trying to come up with a coupon campaign, a perfect opportunity there. So that's the way I look at it. And yes, we're doing a lot of accelerating, getting things done, maybe 25, 35, sometimes only 50% as how long it used to take doing things manually. So we've been very happy with it.
Right. Thank you. And Jim, you're knee deep every single day, I assume, in data governance. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the auto generation of documentation is helpful. I think the great capability is on the privacy side, being able to go through and generate characteristics and classifications around data, particularly data that's embedded inside of large blobs of data, so long descriptions. I think is really super helpful. So instead of having to have somebody sit down and plow through this data, instead you have basically a listener that can go through, look at that data, identify if it's PHI or PCI, and then have an approval process is if you need that as well. But that's the thing that can really save people a lot of time, as well as data security checks. So if you need to do a periodic review of do people have access to the right data and are they using that data, being able to automate that to improve things for the data stewardship community, I think is the huge win that we can realize using AI for data governance.
Thank you. And Sumit, knowledge graphs and AI, I feel they always go hand in hand. What are your thoughts on that in relation to data governance?
Yeah, sure. I think before we can leverage AI for data governance, right, we should govern AI that is going to govern our data. And Sanjeev brought up this idea about AI agents. I would beg to differ with him because recently on Hacker Moon, I read this, I think it was this weekend, where I read about this story that an AI-powered robot staged what is called as robot kidnapping, right? By using, and you can go and read that story on Hacker Noon. It's about pursuing other agents, other robots through dialogue to give up their work, convincing them that their working conditions are not good, and then it staged a sort of a coup. So what I would say is definitely knowledge graphs are a very critical component of automation because, in my opinion, automation will come in stages and not as a big bang. Human in the loop will always be there. And automation would rely a lot of them on the metadata, right, which is both technical, business, as well as operational. And recently I had read that Accenture and BCG probably make more money from Gen AI than combined Anthropic and OpenAI, which is baffling, but makes sense because selling AI automation to enterprises is right now, I think, more about consulting. One example I would just add is there is this platform called Grab. It's like the Uber in Southeast Asia. They have used LLM for automating governance in things like PII detection, as well as data classification. They've also used it for column level tagging of their tables in data lakes. They have curated tag libraries for LLMs to classify. So I feel there are a lot of opportunities, but it's still too early because I think reliance, trust is very important in terms of you're trying to govern the data, and trust on your AI agents is going to become more important, is how I would put it.
Thank you. Well, listen, from what I'm hearing, I think it's pretty clear that this AI-driven automation holds incredible potential. However, as with any transformative technology, implementation isn't without its challenges. So what are those key challenges that you think organizations face when implementing AI for data governance and compliance?
George, I
And
have
how
to
can they be
say,
overcome?
yeah. So George, I have to say that to answer Sumit's point, his points are super valid because a knowledge graph is a great way to get this metadata, which can then reduce hallucinations. But I do have to say that implementation is a challenge, yes, but there are plenty of other challenges. Accuracy, reliability, for example, is an issue. And Sumit pointed out how these robots can hijack other robots. In fact, OpenAI has a model which I think it just came out of GA just a couple of days ago, O1, which is their first reasoning model, and there was a experiment recently where O1 tried to delete its replacement and change the weights, and it did a lot of scary stuff. So all that is happening. My point, the reason I'm bringing this up is because I don't want listeners to get spooked by all these inaccuracies. To me, these are just the way any new technology goes through its gyrations of maturity. In case of AI, it's a little bit more conniving because it has this capability to reason. Some may actually disagree with that, but there's some intelligence there in a neural network that other technologies did not have. But if you put that aside, I think we need to, the first implementation challenge I want to point out is we need to change our mindset. We are coming out of very deterministic way of doing data quality, data governance, analytics, which is based on SQL or scripts, where anytime you run that SQL or a script, you always get the same answer back. But in case of a large language model or Gen AI based, it's probabilistic. So you get some creative answers, if I may, and we need to change our mindset. We need to understand there's a place for deterministic and there's a place for non-deterministic, and use that knowledge to our advantage rather than shy away from it.
Yeah, adding to that, Sanjeev, I think you brought up good points about the misclassification, the classification accuracy related issues, right? The other thing I would think also is affordability of the model to scale in terms of the amount of data entities you may have to classify, for example, right? You're also sending your private data outside, which is a very big concern for a lot of companies I talk with whenever you're using an open AI kind of a interface, right? Also, I think things like, model poisoning, I think LLM security awareness is right now very low, as well as things like data poisoning are very very important issues that needs to be solved to use this from a global perspective, from a larger perspective. And as you said, Sanjeev, agents don't just offer insights, they act, right? And these
Correct.
risks get compounded when agents collaborate, creating a cascading effect and things like that.
So I don't want this to become like just Sumit and I, two colleagues going back and forth. So I'm just going to make one point and then I'm going to let others jump in. So I just want to say all the things that Sumit pointed out, some of them are already non-issues. And so I don't think we should really just look at the cost and affordability. GPT-4o came out only this year, March or so. It was $45 for 1 million tokens. The O1 model, it's 1 cent for 1 million tokens. So the token cost is going away. GPUs right now, we've got NVIDIA that owns the market, but there's so many more competitors that are coming in. So a lot of these things are going to get resolved over time. So anyway, I'll stop here because I want others to also weigh in.
And so I kind of focus on smaller and mid-sized businesses, and the AI efforts coming out of those size companies tend to be done by younger, less experienced, very zealous people. And I give these general cautions, either bluntly, like I'm going to do here, or more politically. There's typically a lack of understanding of the limitations of AI. It's not a magic bullet. We all know that. Some people believe it is. And I see a lack of understanding of the power of AI which can be very dangerous if you don't understand that it needs the proper input to provide acceptable output, going back to Sanjeev's mention of data poisoning. And to counter that, I would expect to see safeguards that are typically not there. And I would expect to see categoric trend analysis. So categorically, what is the output of our model? Is it what we'd expect? Is it overly skewed? Where are the biases and that sort of thing? So I think, to me, the key challenges in the segment that I serve is a lack of understanding of how it can so easily go aside and create havoc. And I've seen that at both small and large scale.
Would you say that there's still an expectation that AI will come in and do data governance for us, even when we don't have it in place? Or that's understood now at the exec level that, no, the tool is not going to come in and fix our problems. We need to have the foundation in first.
Sometimes I do these eval engagements with C-levels or VPs or SVPs or something like that. And they tend to buy into what a vendor sells them, right? And if a vendor is saying they'll do that, they'll believe it. And they'll look to me and I'll say, the AI market really isn't there yet. I mean, what they're saying is they can provide advantage to it, but ethically, it's up to the organization who purchases that capability to put the checks and balances in place. So I think when you ask me if the perception's out there, I would say amongst folks like us on this call, yes. But to the average C-level, I don't think so. I think that they're kind of listening to the vendors and whatever they're selling them.
And I recently spoke about, to a large group of customers cross industry. And one of the things that I brought up was, to that end, there's a worrying tale about overpromising and underdelivering in this space. And I think you need to focus in on use cases first, and then look at what the capabilities are and push the capabilities to get to what those use cases are at. So what can we do to lower the lift for data stewards and people in our data communities so they can take advantage of the knowledge graph to find what they need and do things to be able to be more effective and more efficient. But let's start with the use cases and then drive out the capabilities that are there and expand the capabilities that aren't there. And that's how people are going to have really good success.
Mm-hmm. Piotr, any closing thoughts on
as I was just thinking about those use cases, the simplicity is, I think, the most important, because we cannot ignore the fact, what Dirk said, that there are a lot of young people who just buy also the marketing from vendors, and they actually want to achieve things that are not always possible. So there is a need to show a couple of good use cases, even like we initially talked about generating documentation, understanding the data, figuring some rules to validate the data. And even if we go into agents, it should not be a generic list that the agent can do anything. It should be like a portfolio of ready agents. For example, an agent that can validate, let's say, phone numbers. Just small use cases. If you have a data that match this use case, this particular agent can do it. That's what I see. We need those small tools that can definitely work for a majority of data sets that actually contain the valid data, or actually the data that is usable. It doesn't need to be valid. It must be usable for the tool to pick up.
Right. Thank you. Well, so, implementation challenges aside, one of the most pressing issues that organizations are facing is kind of staying aligned with the ever-evolving data privacy regulations, other regulations as well, not just data privacy. But AI has that potential to play a crucial role here. So how can AI help organizations adapt to and comply with this rapidly changing world of regulations, including data privacy regulations?
I think I've got an interesting perspective. It varies by client for me. And for example, the use of Gemini, ChatGPT, and those things. I have a client today that insists the entire staff use chatbots first before they do anything else. You're going to compose an email, use a chatbot. You're going to write SQL code, use a chatbot. And that's because the management believes it's an accelerator, which I believe it is too. I have another client that strictly prohibits it and actually goes so far as to block all known URLs to AI chatbots. But I think that, my opinion is that it can accelerate reading and interpreting lengthy documents, especially with lots of legalese, like you're going to encounter with GDPR and CCPA. If you want someone to understand it quickly, going through Gemini is going to be a lot faster than reading the lengthy documents. The other thing where I see it's very helpful is the right to be forgotten processes. I think those should be, SQL scripts or Python scripts or something like that. But I also believe that there's a place for AI to go in and find all the little nooks and crannies where a person's data might be hiding that the person who's writing that Python or SQL script just doesn't know about.
I mean, I think you take that another level to be able to go in and use AI to go through and find on one of those requests, if it's rectification, if it's right to be forgotten, et cetera, and do more scanning to find out where that data resides. So you're getting every one of those little pieces that you just talked about. So the data privacy actions have a really good approach to be able to go through and identify what those tasks are and streamline the amount of manual staff time that's required to complete those requests across the gambit of privacy regulations that are out there.
This is a very interesting topic. I feel a lot of different aspects of data all these aspects have to come together. For example, for me to determine if there's a security breach or some anomaly, first of all, I'm getting streaming data. And all these models are not used to streaming data. They're trained on static data at some period in time, because training a model is not for the faint of the heart. It costs a lot of money, thousands of GPUs. And so now we're talking about putting these models to use on real-time data. So that's streaming is one. The second thing is that even if the LLM is able to, we have a fine-tuned small language model, or using RAG, we are able to get this data into an LLM to do some analysis. We still need historical data, because the historical patterns against which I must check in real time. So that's why I need access to historical data as well. So and then on top of that, even if I have historical data, even if I have real-time streaming and I put it together, how do I know the relationship between all this data? For that, I need a knowledge graph. So now you see all these things we've talked about, all of a sudden you need all of these things to have a credible, very powerful Gen AI-based solution, but we cannot ignore our existing data. And because we cannot ignore our existing data, so all the data governance, data quality, access governance, all those things become really important.
And sometimes it's also understanding that regulation itself and really what has changed, right? So do you think these tools can help us with that, to not have a person scour through the hundreds of pages and really understand what the differences are and interpret it, but have some sort of an LLM tool deployed that will be able to offer those answers a little bit quicker?
Yeah, George, we at Ontotext call this regulatory alignment things RegTech, right? It's a sort of a technology that solves regulatory and compliance requirements. And AI may be one approach to doing it, but the way we are thinking about it, and we have been doing it, with knowledge graphs for a long time, especially in the financial domain, right? Regulatory technology with semantic technology helps enterprise reduce the exposure to risk and compliance issues. As Sanjeev said, it's all about building the relationships, interrelationships, right? And knowledge graphs help, because knowledge graphs can help to build that conceptual model, right? The domain model, which can encompass both structured as well as unstructured data. And we have developed tools in this space with the linked data, with the way we do semantic data integration. And like, for example, a lot of financial organizations do KYC, know your customer, which is like a customer 360, which brings in a variety of data sets. And bringing all that variety of data sets into a structured format with knowledge graphs helps to identify risks, helps to do event detection, and help you to identify regulatory non-compliance and things like that. And we have demonstrator use cases for building for showcasing these kind of things, where your domain ontology, domain model can change. Not only the instance data, but newer regulations can come in, and how those newer regulations are affecting older regulations based on temporality, as well as the capabilities of knowledge graphs to do reasoning, where you can inference newer rules from the graph itself and apply them to identify risk signals associated with the entities. So that's how we have been solving this problem. We have also of late been leveraging LLMs to do this, where we pass the changed ontology as a prompt to the LLM to update the knowledge graphs. So there is a whole set of things that needs to happen here in terms of solving this regulatory and compliance issues.
I'm looking at Gen AI in one area because I'm in Poland. Poland had regulations similar to GDPR far before, about 20 years earlier. They were even stricter than GDPR.
No way.
And every company where I even did a project, they required us to do a training. And one of the aspects is to make sure that the data, like a record, does not identify an identity, a single entity, a single person. So of course you can detect phone numbers, emails, but actually from the regulatory perspective, if there is if there are a few values and a comment that says we are talking about the person who has led a Jam live session about AI and is a well-known LinkedIn specialist in data quality and data governance on LinkedIn, it looks like you can find who that is. And if you give this record to Gen AI and ask it, is this data descriptive enough to identify a person, you'll probably get some, say, score that this data actually could reveal the identity. So that's an interesting approach, I think, to use AI to detect sensitive data in a way that would be very hard to do manually.
Nope. I think I lost myself there for a second. Well, thank you so much for that. I mean, AI does offer that immense potential for, governance and compliance, but of course, it also raises critical ethical questions. Issues like bias, accountability, and transparency. All those must be addressed to ensure responsible use. So, what ethical considerations would you say that organizations should prioritize when using AI for governance? Particularly regarding, again, bias, accountability, transparency?
I think there's a growing set of vendors in the AI oversight space, AI observability, I guess. And I think they've gone through and they've started to build out algorithms for bias detection. I imagine a good part of that is taking a look at data elements around how data elements are being used around gender, race, income, etc. So I think that's going to be an evolution that's going to be really important. Is it vendors that are just doing AI observability, or do you start to see that move into data observability tools, data quality tools, catalogs, etc.? But I think that's going to be an area of importance, as is firms that need to go in and start looking at intended bias and make sure you're preventing that from happening.
I recently worked with a company who got in a spot of trouble because they're expected to be very complex credit application processing model was running amok. There was not a lot of understanding of the way stacked data science components work, and the AI engine found its way straight through and essentially became a zip code scanner. So the end result was is anybody who applied for credit with this company who had an inner city zip code was automatically denied. And that's an ethical concern. It wasn't drawn out of malice. It happened because of ignorance, more like. However, I think that leads back to something I said earlier, which is you really need to monitor the output, because you could see things like that happening over too many rejections in the same zip code and no acceptance, obviously a problem with the model. The other thing I look at with ethical considerations, especially in the governance side of things, and especially in the master data area, is AI should not be depended on to decision something. If something is an explicit match in master data, for example, terrific. If it's not, it should be a human who is qualified and trained and knowledgeable, because frankly, not even all humans are qualified to make a judgment in a life or death type match like healthcare or something highly important to the customer, such as finances. So I think that having human judgment and having exceptions spit out of AI processes is essential for integrity, for ethics, and also for the acceptance by your audience, right? If your customers are seeing things like turning down all inner city credit apps, then they're going to not trust your AI in the future as well.
The other thing I would say, or I would like to add here is, there are some important questions we should be asking when developing or leveraging AI. In my opinion, it's almost impossible to have a completely unbiased AI system, right? As developing these AI systems, we are using data that is sort of biased, right? So when using AI to, like, for example, when data used does not pertain to people, then fairness is probably not very relevant. When, for example, if AI is predicting an engine failure, right, fairness probably is not relevant. But when using an AI tool, for example, to recruit or potential candidates for your organization, it becomes very, very crucial, right? Things like facial recognition, in my opinion, a bias system used for a facial recognition system for facial recognition can be extremely dangerous, right? It's okay to have false positives, in my opinion, when using a tool that may help 50% or 60% of the people without using it. The other aspect I would add is there are these two main pillars: explainability and also fairness, right? And explainability is very important to understand how the system arrived at a particular decision and trace the system's path, right? There is no way to know whether the AI behaves as it should, or if bias has crept in, if we don't understand how it arrived at the answer, right? And we, again, at Ontotext GraphWise, have been using knowledge graphs and graph rags to help when we integrate with LLMs, especially our graph rag approach, to point you to the sources of answers. For example, we have built our own website search with graph rag, and you can ask natural language questions to it. But when it gives you answers, it gives you a trace of where are the sources where it found the answers from an explainability, from a provenance perspective. I think those are also important considerations when we think about ethics and bias and things like that.
Thank you. Anything else that anybody wants to add?
Yes, I will.
I think Sanjeev was saying something.
Yeah, I pressed mute. So I was saying that I really like the points that have been made by Sumit and Dirk. In fact, Dirk, you said that even humans sometimes fail at making proper judgments. Well, if that's the case, and we know that's the case, then Gen AI is right on point, because it's supposed to mimic humans. So sorry, I'm digressing here, but my point is that Sumit was saying how important explainability is to understand how the AI model came up with results, but it's almost impossible to do it, because even people who write LLMs cannot explain how LLMs work, because there's layers and layers and layers of neural network to a point where it's a mystery how AI is able to find these similarities or not, and hallucinate. So that's a big problem. So then what can we do? So GraphRag is one of that, is on the output side, like making sure the output of the AI is grounded or has more context and metadata relationships so it can make better decisions. The second thing that will also start happening is where we will start seeing more and more models being trained on our own data. See, today, most models are trained on public data. So we don't even know what data sets these models were trained on, because even when Meta says Llama 3 is open source, it does not disclose what data sets these models were trained on. There are a few providers, IBM Granite models, for example, Apache license, they will tell you these are the data sets. So to avoid these ethical issues, we need to make sure that we have a pristine data. Sometimes it may be even synthetic data. So it's not even, it's mimicking real life data, but there's no PII in it. It's all synthetically generated. So having that knowledge of data set and then using that to train a small language model will hopefully help us avoid some of these ethical issues.
Yeah, just to add here, there is, I think a few weeks back, I ran into this website. It's called Ethical AI Database Project, which is a publicly available set of vetted databases of AI startups providing a lot of ethical services. So it's like another kind of a service where you are getting the answers, and then you're going back to an ethical service to figure out if the answer is ethical based on the model that you have used. So it's a very fast developing area there. But there is a whole database of AI services now for ethical purposes.
But how does that really work if you start getting into agents, interfacing with agents and other agents? So if, already we've got difficulty in being able to find out how in the world it came up with the conversation. And now if, there's a lot of PE firms out there that are pushing that idea of agents interfacing with more agents. And you could make the argument that's a way to insulate people from being responsible for ethical violations, because it's somebody else's agent that we just consumed. So just thoughts for the group on that?
I'm also thinking about that an AI has actually three sides, because there is a training data set that could be biased, especially in Gen AI. We have the input data that we provide, especially now with big context windows. If you can even apply a whole data set, so this data can be biased. And the question is also that these tools provide a response in a text. So even if we look at the hints or help that, or some messages that the tool can provide, are they biased? Because if you look at a couple of approaches, you can tell the AI what is the style that it should generate the answer. Should be very professional, or maybe
I think we have some problem. So, it's interesting. The data may be just biased because humans are biased. I remember a very interesting example that happened a few years ago, before generative AI was even talked about, where some very large Fortune 10 company decided to create a machine learning program to go through the database and understand which employees were most likely to rise up to the leadership level and should be trained in advance, should get extra training. So when this model ran, it turned out that almost all the responses came back for white male people. And so the output was highly biased because there were no diversity, no gender choices and all that. But it turned out the history of that data was like that the model did what it was told to do. It wasn't hallucinating. It just said the data was exactly what had happened in the last 50 years of that company's history.
I think I remember something similar, that it was Amazon. They had this AI algorithm to kind of parse through all their applications to kind of streamline the hiring process, and that's exactly what happened, Sanjeev. What you pointed out, that the training model that they had and the training data that was feeding this model, I mean, most of them were like white males that applied historically for these types of roles, and that's what it was then weighting more, because the algorithm thought, okay, well, that's better because that's what we have as well. But
Yeah.
listen, like you said, Sanjeev, this is something that it's has plagued humanity for a long time, and it's definitely a challenge with AI as well. I think we can talk about it for hours more, but let's look ahead.
Can I say one very interesting thing? I read this a few months ago. There was this case where this parent was complaining about the kid always looking down, not going out to play, and just not how his generation was. And this had nothing to do with a laptop, a mobile phone, or TV, or video. This was a very old text about books getting invented, and this kid was reading books which did not exist in the previous generation. So this is hundreds of years ago. People were complaining about new technology polluting the minds of a new generation. So just wanted to point out.
I remember, a similar story. I think it was back in the 70s when the handheld calculators came, and it's like, oh, well, this is going to destroy everything, and we're not going to be able to make calculations again, right? Yeah. Correct. Yeah. So, well, looking ahead, I mean, AI will continue to evolve and really shape the way organizations function, including how they approach data governance and compliance. So, to wrap up our discussions, let's focus on the future. How do you think AI will continue to shape the future of data governance and compliance, and what trends should organizations prepare for to remain competitive and compliant?
So we've historically used data management platforms like Informatica, Talon, DataStage, things like that. But now we're seeing more of the data stores, say like Snowflake, starting to add automated data governance, and they're really pushing that. And on some of the things, in my opinion, things like cataloging, again, and business terms and data dictionary, that's a great step. And it's interesting to see these companies doing this, because that part of data governance, I believe, can be fully automated. When we get into data classification and securitization of PII, PCI, PHI, again, I think we need human judgment involved, just like we would with MDM. But I think, to me, I see it as the ecosystem is changing. And today we go to Informatica for data governance. Tomorrow we go to Snowflake. Who knows what we go to 5 years from now? I see it as an active evolutionary path.
I would just add that I think a lot of what's gonna happen is the AI capabilities, be it machine learning, be it NLP, be it Gen AI, are going to do a great service to lower the lift. So the people that are having to do the mundane things today are able to expedite that, and maybe they're doing 80% of the work is starting, and they're able to polish that off and do the higher value things to drive out greater value. So I think it's all about lowering the lift and increasing efficiency of the sharpest, best data minds in our organizations.
Anybody else? Any closing thoughts?
Well, I fully agree that the demanding tasks should be automated, and especially when we say that there is so much value in data that organizations have. But also the duplication of data is so huge. So how to find the valuable data, not the original data, not any copy, just the data that has value. So I think this is the area that we can see everybody wants to have a perfect data lineage, but nobody wants to do the mapping, because all the information, how the data went through, is actually hard to collect. But if you apply a multi-model approach, you will see that there is some source code. If there is no way to figure out by tracking the code that loaded the data, maybe just look for similar data that is so similar that definitely it must be a copy. And the more information you can put and ask the AI, okay, does it look like actually this table is a copy of that table? The more you can build a real data lineage and figure out what is the primary data and what is the secondary data. That's actually, that would probably solve a lot of challenges.
I want to add one more area to this discussion. So a lot of things what Peter just mentioned and others, I feel we are all thinking structured data and copies of data and tables or graphs or documents, like document database, like JSON. But there's also semi-structured data and there's unstructured data. So now we are talking about data quality for all of these data types. And this is where I feel we are going to go through a whole journey once again, because how do you tell what is the quality of data in a PDF document and whether it's ethically correct or not? It's so contextual that we are going to struggle at this. If I have an agent that goes out and does research for me and summarizes the data and brings it back to me, I need to know the quality of that summary. But I haven't seen the original data. I haven't read a very academic PDF document. And so how in the world am I going to know whether this is high quality or not? And now that data has been created into embeddings. It is sitting in a vector database or my other database. I've got named entities that have been extracted all by LLM. And now I have to apply quality on that. So I'm just curious how this panel is thinking about that.
Well, I was working on a project, I think 2 years ago, when we had to put all documents and build a repository to search for them using contextual search. But it was not possible to apply AI because the technology was selected. And it was actually a big challenge just to use libraries on the market only to retrieve text and convert PDF files and images, a lot of scans of documents to figure out just the text that you can search for. But actually, when we finished, that was the moment when multimodal AI appeared that could actually understand that, our approach was just to use a library to extract, convert a PDF file to a structured format where you have just the texts. But now, actually, if you know that there is a field that says name and there is a text, sometimes PDF files have every letter separately written. But Gen AI actually can read that. So it can go beyond, find this context, understand what it is, and if you ask it to extract entities, it will extract things that you are not able to extract. So that's actually an opportunity to extract sense and information from PDF files or even scans. We had 10 million documents to analyze.
Thank you. Thank you, Piotr. Well, and thank you to all of you for sharing such valuable insights today. It's clear that AI is not just a tool, but a transformative force in the realm of data governance and compliance with incredible potential for the future and, of course, challenges to overcome. Really appreciate all your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Excellent. Great job, everyone. Before we go, I want to invite each of you an opportunity to promote your company solution, a podcast, a book, LinkedIn profile, whatever you'd like. But as we are short on time, let's try to keep those responses under 20 seconds. We'll go counterclockwise. So let's start off with Sumit. You're up first.
Hi, so I represent GraphWise, a company that is recently merged with OntoText and Semantic Web company. We build knowledge graphs. We provide capabilities to. We have what is called as a graph database, where you can build a semantic knowledge graph to solve a lot of your data management challenges like data quality, lineage, provenance, especially semantic data integration across a variety of data sets, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. That's in short about the kind of solutions we
Awesome.
do.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Sanjeev, how about you? Where would you like to send the audience?
I would be highly grateful if the audience can subscribe to my It Depends podcast on YouTube and to my sanchmo.medium.com blog site. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Appreciate your time. Peter, over to you.
So I would especially invite everybody to find me on LinkedIn because I had my personal goal to make as many interesting posts about data quality as I can. So I created like 150 of them so far for the last 6 months. And also you can look at my open source data quality platform, which is, I think, quite interesting. Please check me on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Thank you very much for being here. Jim, what about you?
Yeah, I'd love to have people just follow me on LinkedIn. Trying to get good recordings out of the super experienced folks in the data governance space. And if you have a need to go deep with AI and data governance, reach out to me at Wavical Data Solutions and be happy to help along informal conversation or move doing something more substantial. Thank you.
Thank you. Dirk, how about you? Where would you like to send the audience?
Sure, thank you. So I can be found easily on LinkedIn under Dirk Garner, my name, or Garner Consulting. Additionally, garnerconsulting.com has more information on it. My organization provides all things data strategy, data governance, and engineering, including process design and evolution. And we also do data architecture, design, and implementations.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Last but not least, George, our moderator.
Thank you. Well, feel free to get in touch with me on LinkedIn or explore lightsondata.com and its YouTube channel, where I share resources, courses, practical takeaways to help organizations and individuals implement and improve their data governance program and tackle any other data management challenges.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Appreciate all of you again for the last hour. It's been a treat listening in on this conversation. But I would like to thank our audience as well for your attention over the last hour. If you'd like to dive even deeper and learn more about enterprise technology, please visit our brand new website over at insightjam.com, your always on destination for technology needs and research. Or you can subscribe to our YouTube channel for panel highlights, weekly podcasts, expert advice, and so much more. We will be back with another expert keynote in just a few short minutes. Monica K. Royal is going to talk about strategies for data protection. You don't want to miss that, so don't go anywhere. Until then, though, thank you for watching. My name is John. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.